All right, everyone. Hopefully you had a nice break. And with this, actually, I just want to say one quick thing. So hopefully you saw your project teams online. We'll break you out into groups so you can meet everybody on your teams in a moment. But this is a good, sorry, one thing I wanted to say was that we tried to cap teams of 3, but based on people's preferences, I ended up making some teams of 4, and I thought that this would be fine given the preferences that people had for which projects to work on. So you might have a team of 3, you might have a team of 4, just so you know. But with that, we are really very lucky that we are joined by our guest speaker. So Joanna Demkow-Bartlomé is
Hello.
A representative of Swiss PropTech, and she also is the founder of a organization called Kvalho, and I think she'll say more about kind of what she is and what she does. But we're really lucky she's here because she's one of the experts about entrepreneurship in AEC in Switzerland and has judged several startup competitions for construction tech, and I think has a very unique view on this area. So with that, we're very happy to have you as a guest lecturer, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off and let you go ahead and take it away from here.
Thank you, Daniel. First question, can you hear me, and if everybody can hear me? Okay, all good. So I will be happy to start. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy to tell you more about entrepreneurship in Switzerland in comparison to other countries, where we are and where we would like to be. I would like to break my lecture into 2 parts. We will start with a very short introduction, move into entrepreneurship in Switzerland, and then I will follow up with a little bit of focus on customers, because that's the most important thing when developing solutions and products. I have some links to resources for you. Hopefully that would help you with your development of your projects. And we will have time also for Q&A. I encourage you strongly also to ask questions. Hopefully I know majority of those answers. If not, I'll be happy to follow up with emails and so on. So as Daniel already said, my name is Joanna Demkow-Bartlomé. Oh, sorry. I have master's degree in structural engineering. After working in the industry for about 7 years, I decided to move into business development of construction companies, helping Swiss companies to move their innovative products into foreign markets. And I'm wearing at the moment 2 hats. I'm a head of ConTech, so construction technologies at SwissPropTech, as well as I'm a founder of a company called Kvalho, focused on venture growth, so growing companies or growing businesses, and technology scouting for companies. From time to time, I have the privilege to also advise startups in the industry and a little bit of outside of this industry, linking to smart buildings, smart cities, and clean tech. In terms of my experience, I've worked on projects in various countries, not only in Switzerland. I originally come from Poland. Majority of my career I spent in the US and in the UK. Recently, I got certified in design thinking by IDEO, the famous organization, and I'm really happy to bring my knowledge into the building industry. And the second part of my lecture today would be about that a little bit. So how does the innovation landscape look like in the architecture, engineering, and construction in Switzerland? First of all, a little bit about SwissPropTech. We are a young organization, about 3.5 years old, and we started purely from the need of the market, need of the startups. There were 7 startups in Switzerland who got together with the idea and the need, a clear need. They said, well, It's nice that we have all of those ideas, all those products and solutions, but we don't have the customers. And it's not a problem to find a customer by name in terms of a company. We can also find the right person on LinkedIn and contact them, but it's not that easy to close the deal. So we need to see those people a little bit more often than just visiting them one time and following up with a phone call. And this is how SwissPropTech was born. So listening to the customer's needs. We are at the moment, we have over 140 organizations in our community. 80 of them are startups. We divide them by scale-ups and startups. Startups are those companies who are not older than 3 years. They still are working on their product market fit, and they don't have yet a stable customer base. 70 of our startup companies are in the scale-up phase, meaning they are already growing, they have customers, they know what they are selling. As well as we have, of course, corporations, which are the customers of those startups, investors, and various partners, including R&D, media partners, and so on. SwissPropTech has a very clear vision, and we decided not to only focus, because from the name you might think that we are focused only on property sector. It's not that. I will clarify also for you what PropTech really means. We decided to focus on the entire building life cycle. You might know the topic of BIM in the construction industry. We realized really early on that without involving the early planning phase, architects, engineers, we will not be able to push BIM in the construction industry. So we had to link two industries together, construction and real estate. And you can see, and those are the names, ConTech are the construction innovations, and ReTech is the real estate. All together, we call it PropTech. Our vision is to make the building industry more innovative and make the design, delivery, and management of buildings easier and more efficient. What is PropTech? If you Google it, if you try to find the description and exactly what this term means, there is many of those. This is our description. We believe that PropTech is a cluster of few startup sectors in a way. So is the real estate, is the construction, is the clean tech, because when we talk about, for example, solar panels, that's within the clean tech sector. And this, of course, ventures into the topics of smart buildings and smart cities. And of course, construction is not only about products or services or building materials, it's also about contracts. Therefore, there is also legal tech, because they are transactions, there's also fintech. So that's quite complex. We simplify it and we say PropTech is an implementation of technology to improve the way we build, the buildings are built, designed, constructed, and renovated. Just so you know, I will share this presentation happily with you. So you don't need to make screenshots or pictures. I will send this anyway as a PDF to Daniel. How does the PropTech scene looks like? Just a second. In comparison to the EU and globally. In Switzerland, we believe there is around 200 of those young companies trying to provide solutions for construction and real estate. As I said, within our network, we have around 80 of them. Some of them are already too old, and we only have in our community companies which are no older than 7 years. That's when we call them still startups. After 7 years, they are already grown-up companies. In Europe, there is around 2,800 of them, and globally 7,000. I've heard even numbers 8,000. It's difficult to really know because those numbers are really changing, and depending on what platforms you are checking on, they provide a different information. That's more or less how it looks like. I think somehow. Okay. How do we compare in terms of funding for those companies and in terms of number of those companies in the EU? So the leader in Europe in terms of amount of those young companies in the sector is the UK. They also get the biggest amount of funding. Switzerland is clustered as the DACH region with Germany and Austria, and we are proudly all together taking the second place with around 515 PropTech companies and 340 million investment raised. I must say that the construction technologies are really having a good time since last year. For some time, it was very difficult to attract investors because they thought that the property-related purely startups have more potential, but we know how big the construction playground is. Therefore, nowadays, we see more and more construction-related startups have fantastic investments. About some of them, we don't even hear, because as soon as the company is having a great product, they just very quickly get bought by large players in the industry. We might not hear even about their names. Once per year, together with one of our members, Credit Suisse, we do deep market research in Switzerland. We ask the startups and the existing companies in the construction and real estate space, architecture, engineering, of course, how do they work together? How was the year for them? What's their focus? And so on. And as I said, the community is quite young. We are not yet, we are about 3.5, I believe, years old. Majority of our companies, the young innovators, are in the growing stage, scaling stage. There's around 50% of them. I provided this full slide with description, a text description, not for you to read it right now. It's just when you revisit those slides that you understand exactly. So please focus just on the right-hand side. There is, of course, number of growing startups which are, or companies, we record every single, I would say, quarter. We see some new companies popping up. My call to action, because my heart is in construction, is, of course, develop as many ideas as possible. The industry is really hungry for those solutions. I'm really glad you are also working on this project. When we talk about the focus of startups in Switzerland in the build world, majority of them provide solution for property sector. Why is this? This is simply easier, because the property sector, when we talk about selling properties, buying properties, or portfolio management, those topics and those issues are understood also by general public. Therefore, those ideas come from people from the outside of the industry, because every one of us experiences looking for an apartment and not finding it and trying to come up with better ideas or better solutions to do that. With construction, it's a little bit more complicated. We see that majority of founders in construction sector, at least the ideas, are born from within the industry. When architects or engineers or anybody, any industry player really experiences some pain, and they try to find a solution to that. What does that mean for you? There is a huge opportunity for developing ideas, of course, and it's an untapped potential, mainly in two core parts, I would say. So construction management is one of it, and of course, design, planning, and the entire development, generally speaking. How those ideas are born and developed, I would say, so looking also at this graph, you can see everything which is in pink. This is where the potential exists. So I say construction is a big playground for those ones who want to support it with new solutions, new ideas, new solutions, and new products. And last year, we set up a group. It was just a simple meetup group for digital construction. And we were absolutely astonished what happened, because it was open to anybody. You as a student could also come to those events and join us. About 30% of attendees were coming outside of the industry. Where they were coming from was the IT sector. So what we see as a trend right now is that the IT sector is just waiting outside of the gates, I call it, and they're observing what can be done. And as soon as they understand where they can provide the value added, they are very happy to take that space. And as we know, they can deliver or develop those ideas very quickly. So please be also aware of that, be quick. And of course, it's a great opportunity to partner with those companies. I always say that having ideas is not enough. You need to solve the problems of the industry. And this is what majority of the startups do. So when you look at the construction challenges, I'm sure you already have been talking about this in your class. Productivity in any other sector since 25 years has doubled. In construction, has declined. That's a very funny situation, but that's the truth. We are talking also about construction contributing to 30% of global CO2 emission. We know that construction is also consuming majority of the raw material. We know that the labor, the skilled labor is a problem in the industry. It's difficult to attract young people to the industry because they simply don't see it as the cool industry to be in. We also, or you surely have heard about rapid urbanization, when around 200 people every week move to urban areas. And that means they need schools, they need new infrastructure and so on. Maybe we don't see those numbers here in Switzerland, but globally, in certain developing countries, that's the truth. They're also gonna need housing, and there is also great opportunity to contribute to that. And one very important thing, and that's for me very astonishing, that reducing construction costs by only 1% globally through productivity could save global industry approximately 1 billion each year. So as you could imagine, there is a lot of potential in doing that. And this is what the startups try to do. They try to basically address some of the obvious issues. Many of them also focus on niches. Here is an interesting graph in terms of what kind of solutions ConTech startups, construction startups provide. Majority of them address the collaboration situation, meaning collaboration between the design team, architects, engineers, specialized engineers, and so on. Then, of course, off-site construction, which is very strong in Switzerland. I must say I was part of a team which was bringing this off-site solutions from Switzerland to the UK. It worked really well in the construction, especially the timber construction here is really advanced. Project management and so on. There is lots of opportunities, again, lots of different technologies used. My observation is that the software solutions are a little bit more popular simply because they are cheaper to develop, meaning you don't need to have a production plant to produce them. So this is software-based, this is internet-based and scalable. It is more difficult to develop new construction products or building material, and this is just purely developing it. Maybe it's not that difficult, however, scaling it, it's more cash intensive, because if you come up with a, let's say, new insulation, most likely you need to find either a specialized production lane or factory or so on. So we don't see that many of those investments yet. We also ask, the startup world is not only flowers and stars and fame. That's maybe in the Facebook world. It doesn't look like this. It's quite a lot of struggles, I must say. And we also want to understand that. And we ask startups where the main challenges are every year. And they don't really change. So since 3 years, we hear that, of course, funding, so access to money is can be challenging, it's difficult, but also doing sales, so selling those ideas. I always say that when the idea is good and the potential for scaling is big, the money will find you. There is a lot of money around. But if you cannot convince your customer that what you produced or you developed is useful for them, or if they don't see that it's useful for them, there is no money on earth or no way on earth to make and close the deal, make a sale and close the deal. So we wanted to know why the startups are not selling or have difficulties with selling, and who to ask. Of course, we wanted to ask the customers what's the reason why they are not buying. And it was also very clear. They said, well, we don't see the value added. And they didn't understand also exactly the product market fit. They just simply didn't see how this solution or this product of the startups is solving their problem. Or often happens that the problem is just not a big problem for that very moment, or it's just not, the customer doesn't see it as a pain. So it is your job to find those burning pains. We can always compare it to ourselves. If there is no huge pain, people often don't go regularly to the dentist, or they, when you have an extreme pain, you find it very easily. And it's similar with business. If there is no huge pain and it's just a nice to have, I can assure you, you will not close the deal. So the formula for success: solve a meaningful problem for other people. And I would take it even farther. In construction, we very often think about companies. We say, we are in B2B business, we are solving problems for companies. We are architects, we work with investors, or we are engineers, we work with contractors, and we say that we work with a company, but company is nothing different than collection of people. So we need to really understand who is the person we are selling to and what problem we are solving for them within that company. Here are a few examples of the companies in the AEC space who do it right. And of course, you've heard about Katera. They are different opinions. Of course, they started huge. They had, I think, at some stage over 7,000 employees. They are shrinking a little bit, but that's also normal. Those companies have very big vision. They go for big money. They are able to convince investors, and they just adjust their course on the way. So nothing is perfect. Nobody knows everything from the start. It is okay also to adjust. So I will not go through this entire list. You will have it. You can check also what those companies exactly do. And that brings me to the second part of this lecture. I have to check on time how I'm doing, because I think I'm going quite fast. I would like to introduce you to a concept of speaking to customers and validating your ideas. And this is what already Daniel touched on when explaining the platform development and going through different versions. Just as a fact, so if you have 10 startups, usually 9 of them will fail and 1 will survive. So 90% of those great ideas don't make it. And this is why. So usually the founder gets an idea, gets super excited about it, builds the solution, very often very technical, tries to sell it, usually tries to sell it after spending a lot of time in their office, not leaving the building, developing idea until it's perfect, goes out, nobody wants to buy this solution, the startup runs out of money, and that's the end of the startup. But it doesn't have to be you, and there is a way to avoid that. So there are 3 simple steps to keep in mind straight from the beginning when you are setting up your new business, or when you are developing the idea to set up the business. There is no facts inside of the building. What does this mean is you will not find the answers in your office, in your classroom, or in the building. You simply have to go out to the world, define who your customer is, and ask them the question and validate your idea with them. I will explain how to do it a little bit later. And I already said that previously, no business is built on a nice to have features. So those things which are just nice to have, they make somehow maybe and this usually happens with developing the software solutions. When we start with one idea and then we say, this customer also said that he wants to have that, and let's just add another button, and let's just add another feature, or that would be nice to have, and they surely will use it. And in reality, if the problem or if your solution doesn't solve a big frustration for the customer, it's not important, this nice to have, and they will just not make a decision to buy it or to work with you. No plan survives its first contact with the market. So this is the myth that we have to work, and I must tell you, this is a very European thing. When we compare how startups in Europe work, comparing, for example, to the US, we are perfectionists here. So we love to sit and develop the idea until we think it's perfect. And we believe that's our final product. Let's go out now and sell it. It does not work this way. It can be rough idea. Of course, it has to look appealing to the customer. It doesn't have to be the final version. It's important to go out to the customer and test it. And very often we can see this let's say, in a world of consumer goods or any products which are directed to the consumer, where companies just do the beta version or the simple version, they send it out, or they have some easy landing page where they can really check if the customer is hungry for that. And I think Dropbox started as like this. They just had a simple landing page and they were just testing the appetite of their customers with a simple description of what they do. And they had so many signups that they decided to develop that product. So how designing better business looks like. There is a process. If you flip it around, it looks like infinity. And designing a business is not one-off exercise, it continues. And now it's a great time when in the Corona times also, we see not only startups, but existing businesses, they have to revisit this process and they have to adjust to the current needs of their customers. So where we start with the team, setting up the team and setting up the right team, not only the technical team. And I saw your Daniel's description of how you set up the teams. That's a really, really great approach. You have, everybody is responsible for different things. You have sales, you have business development, you have engineers and so on. Of course, the team has to have point of view, so-called vision. to start with, and you have to align that vision at the beginning. And then you go through the process of understanding, understanding the customer, creating ideas, then you prototype those ideas, and then you validate them with customers. And the process doesn't stop there. You go back again to understanding your customers' needs, and you come up again with a set of ideas and you prototype it. So you go back through this number eight process a few times. And now, how does this look in details? Let me just check, maybe it's, yeah. So I skipped this one. You can read it when you receive the slides, and I will go in details into those processes. Just very quickly, in the first step, when we talk about understanding the customers, we need to, of course, I call it defining 3 W's, and that's defining what the customer wants, and I will explain this to you. In prototyping, we talk about a minimum valuable product, and in validating, it's about product market fit, or finding the product market fit. So let's go to understanding the customer. I decided to provide you with some guidance, and I'm not sure if you already spoke about it, or maybe you will be talking about it together with your leaders of the teams or advisors. I just thought I will introduce you to some of the tools which are commonly used in business or by startups. And that's the value proposition canvas. And why is this? This allows us to understand the customer, and it allows us to first map up our understanding of the customer's needs versus the solution we want to provide for them, and test it with them and really validate if we are right. So the understanding and the 3W questions are as follows. Who are you selling to? So who is your customer? Second question is, what are they buying? So what solution are you providing? That's one thing. But second is, what are they interested in? What problem are you addressing? And why do they buy this solution? And just to give you an example, when you talk, for example, to maybe an example from my personal experience. Once I was involved in a project where we were selling Swiss designed, Swiss engineered modular timber construction to one of the largest, second in the world largest grocery store, kind of like Coop and Migros. And they were building 4,000 square meter shop. What we were selling to them, we thought, is a timber construction, which is easy to assemble. What they were buying from us was the sustainable solution, which they could also communicate with the customer. So you really need to understand their problems, and you need to understand their motivation about the product. And there is no other way to figure out exactly what you need to address when developing a solution is than just speaking to them and asking those questions and understanding. Business is all about helping others. The second step, or actually it's more than already a fourth step. It's ideation. So coming up with as many ideas as possible to address those pains of the customer. As a tool, great to use the business model canvas. You should come up as many as possible, and none of them is the final product yet. You just have to use your intuition and use the insights also from testing when you will be redoing this loop. And you need to also, as my great also advice for coming up with great ideas is to look outside of the industry. And Daniel already showed you that also. I also do this looking into automotive industry for inspiration. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Many times those good solutions which can be adapted for our industry exist in other industries. It's just that we have to understand them. So come up with as many ideas as possible for your business, and keep different versions of this business model canvas, which you will then bring it to the customer or to the validation. Now, when we have all of those ideas, we need to prototype them. But if we end up, let's say, with having 15 ideas, probably we will choose just few, 3 or 4 to prototype, our best bet. And then we want to check this with how the customers react on it. And in terms of methods, there is various methods depending, again, if you're developing software solution or if you're developing a product solution, then you can use different ways of prototyping. For products and hardware, very often you can use, at the beginning, very easy paper prototype, or 3D printing, that's a little bit more advanced. I've seen some prototypes done in just 3D, that's especially when we talk about buildings and systems, different building systems. And nobody will ever start with doing the prototype straight away, which costs a lot of money. But of course, providing visualization is a great thing. You can also provide or make a brochure, kind of like a marketing brochure, and test it with the customer. You can explain it in the video. Some good ideas are also using competitive products and adjusting them a little bit. That's so-called boomerang. And again, clickable prototype or storyboard when we talk about solutions from the software side. And what do you need to keep in mind when prototyping is you need to make those prototypes, of course, clear and usable and tangible, that the customer really can go through it, they can check it, they can test it, they can touch it, and they can give you feedback on that. So you can ask questions, of course, as is this the best way to address the pains of the customers? What can we improve? Is this the best way to monetize on this idea? What can we improve there? What did we learn from the customers? What resonated with them? What didn't resonate with them? And most likely, if you come up with an idea to have a car with 5 wheels, you might really love the idea and say that's super stable, but from the customers, from the prototyping and testing, you probably will learn that they don't need that. It doesn't bring them any value, and that's it, your lesson learned. And the last part is just validating your idea. And for this, again, there is a tool. You can use test cards and learning cards. Again, I will provide you with the links to it. And in terms of methods, of course, I always say validating ideas is art of its own, because you need to make sure you ask the questions the right way. Less talking, more listening. Really listen and observe how the customers react. You can do it by face-to-face interviews. Sometimes companies do surveys. I personally prefer the validation by observing people when they test the ideas and you are sitting in front of them. This can be also done via online tool. Nowadays, there are some companies use social media campaigns or email campaigns to see how ideas resonate with them. And of course, the sales team feedback. That's in a later stage where you have sales team going out and trying to sell your idea. They are the best resource for feedback. They have the contact with the customer and they really understand what the customer wants. So the advice, quick advice from me for now, by now, or you already have your topics, and you should understand who are you selling the problem for. Usually that might not be only one persona or type of or target group. It could be the customer. So depending on what you do, it's a maybe end customer, maybe it's an investor, maybe it's a contractor, maybe it's an architect. And maybe you need to collect some information from an advisor or from industry expert. No matter who you target, you should always prepare or have a list of 3 questions to each of those people, that if you bump into them in the tram, or if you have them on the phone, or if you approach them by LinkedIn, or you meet them at the university, that you can always ask them those questions. And this really proves well when we talk about startup world, where they are doing a lot of networking, but of course for you to develop your ideas, that's also very valuable. In terms of resources, my advice for now, very easy books to read. I'm a big fan of the MAM tests. That's how it's about asking the right questions when doing interviews with customers and really understanding the customers. And the 2 books by Swiss author Alexander Osterwalder, Value Proposition Design and Testing Business Ideas. If you prefer, they are also in German. Those are the resources which to purchase, but as a first step, there is a free download, fantastically done platform by Strategizer. You have the link below. You can register. I did this yesterday just to check it, how this works. There is about 30 different forms and resources you can use for free. They have superb videos to explain how to use it, how they work. So just start with that. You don't need those books for this very moment. If you are not, if you don't want to invest in this very moment, just check it first for the free version. And that's all from myself. If you have any questions, feel free. I'm happy to answer those questions right now. And in the meantime, feel free to also scan the QR code. This should bring you to my LinkedIn profile. I'll be happy to connect with you. If you have any questions in the future, I'm happy also to answer your questions. So for the moment, that's all from me, unless you have any questions. So I guess I will pass over to Daniel, or you can just simply ask me in the chat.
Well, I think first, Joanna, thank you very much from my side. It was a perfect lecture to describe this process, which many of the students are trying to take on now in the project. So you'll notice that the steps from IDEO about the customer journey, or to understand the customer, the problem, these match very well with the prompts that you'll be receiving over the next 5 to 6 weeks. So we have a really good alignment. And I actually just wanted to really quickly show this. I'm going to steal back your screen sharing.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And move it over to here. What we've done is we've set up a Jamboard. Now, you don't have to use this, but we would love it if each group does this. So each challenge has a Jamboard. And as you can see here, we have each week a challenge to work on. And Fira has made a video already for this week, as I mentioned. And then a spot for you to put your deliverables. And this is a great chance for us to also be able to see how your team is progressing. Normally in class, we have lots of free time where I can walk around and help you. And the other courses assistants can as well. But we thought this might be a way that you can kind of put your answers in. And so just to clarify, so this week, the challenge is really that first step on Joanna's diagram about meeting your team and kind of just understanding your starting point of view. So what's your problem? What are you working on? And then next week, your job is to really understand your customer is working on. Sorry, my internet just went in and out. I hope it's okay. And that really fits with some of the questions that Joanna gave to us. So this will be part of your deliverable will be to answer some of these questions about your customer. So then therefore we have already our next 2 weeks of work, I think, perfectly started out from. So thanks again, Joanna. And I think we have some time if people want to stay a few minutes longer. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. I see we have a question from Irfan. So yeah, maybe I'll just repeat it for everybody. But what is better? He's asking, should I rather gain experience as an employee in the construction industry after my studies and work on my own solutions, or should I directly try to develop my own solution and bring it to the market? How have other entrepreneurs and companies done that?
Mm-hmm. That's a really, really good question. There are different schools, I would say. There are some founders which went straight into developing the solution, but I think majority of them actually experience the problems on their own skin. And I think, to be honest with you, when I look at myself, I've worked in the industry now 17 years, and I really value my time as an employee just because I understood what the problems are. I understood the cultures of those companies, the mindset they have, the issues, the process they have internally. I never worked for a massive company. I always worked for the SMEs, which was for me anyway quicker to navigate within. And just to let you know, you don't need to do one or the other. Nowadays, construction companies also have their entrepreneurial units. And you really, if you are very driven and you want to do entrepreneurial things, you can also do it within the company. So my advice is go and gain some experience just to understand. Maybe don't stick to one company for too long. My beginning in the US, and that's how it worked in the States, is that you should work 1 year and 1 day and nobody will question you why you are changing. In Europe, maybe they will say that this is a job hopping a little bit. And I did this job hopping anyway. It didn't hurt me. It worked really well. But I was able also to understand so many different companies. I really liked it. So that would be my suggestion. Go and check out a little bit, and then you will know where the real problems are and how to address them.
I think that's a perfect answer. I'm gonna stop things now, but I think Joanna has offered, if you have further questions, you can follow up with her directly. Yeah, I guess we can't really applaud for her, but maybe in the comments, if you want to say thank you. It's a bit more tricky to thank our guest speakers via Zoom, but we're really appreciative for the lecture. And what we're gonna do, yeah, what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna keep the Zoom open. I'm actually going to I've assigned everybody into a breakout room for your groups, and so hopefully it's gonna jump you into your different groups so you can say hello. Just a couple of quick notes. Group 3 DFAB, we had a very late adjustment, so there's been a slight change, so we'll follow up with you on that. And otherwise, I hope it works, but if not, I really encourage you to reach out to your teammates, schedule a first meeting, and start working on introducing yourselves and defining your problem, and watch Firihewat's prompt to get you started. So thanks very much to all for the class. Joanna, also I have a breakout room for us because we were going to chat a little bit also, so you'll probably get moved over also. And thanks to everyone, and we'll see you next week for next week's class with a guest lecture from Project Frog, which will be really interesting. So
thank you once again, and stay safe, everyone, and stay healthy. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, I've opened up the breakout rooms, and you should now have the option to join. Or if you have other meetings, I know we're past time for class, so if you have other meetings, you can you can meet with your teams another time.